in newly released emails sent by one Jeffrey Epstein, the now infamous paedophile wrote that Donald Trump knew about his crimes and even spent hours, to use his words, with one of his victims. You can read more about this on the LBC app, but you can hear more about it right now with Emily Maitlis, co-host of Global's podcast, The Newsagents, who's in the studio with me. Another twist, another turn.
This is the story that keeps giving, isn't it,
does,
Sheila?
as you said it would.
As I said it would. Well, what I said last time we talked was it's the tip of the iceberg, and we're just getting little glimpses of the rest of the iceberg. So this new batch of emails has been released by Democrats in the US on the House Oversight Committee. And we know of about 3. In one of them, it was Jeffrey Epstein telling Ghislaine Maxwell, now serving 20 years in prison, that Trump spent hours, this phrase, spent hours at his house with one of Epstein's victims. That is Jeffrey Epstein writing to Ghislaine Maxwell that Trump spent hours at his house with one of Epstein's victims. That is one of the emails that has been released. There are 2 other emails which go to the author, the writer, Michael Wolff. Now, Michael Wolff is a very sort of colourful character who's written a lot about Trump, has actually spent weeks inside the White House writing sort of Trump close up. And he says Epstein writes that, of course, he knew about the girls. He means President Trump. Now, according to these exchanges, Epstein actually asked Michael Wolff for his advice in how he should handle Trump when he was going to be discussing their friendship in an interview with CNN. And according to this email, Wolff writes, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane, the Lolita jet, as they called it, or to the House, that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt." Now,
talk about Machiavellian.
I mean, but hasn't that always surrounded the question of why Epstein, what he was doing and why he was recording people and why he was keeping notes.
And how he played them off against each other.
This whole idea of compromat material. And, I mean, I have to say, Michael Wolff doesn't come out of this particular tranche of emails particularly well, advising a man that he seems to know was a paedophile of how he should play Trump.
To his own benefit.
To his own benefit,
And the Oversight Committee, tell me a bit more about them, the House Oversight Committee.
Well, this is fascinating, OK? I'm not going to give you the potted history of the shutdown in the US, except to say that after weeks and weeks, it looks like a move is afoot to reopen it. Why is this important? Because whilst the US government has been shut down, they have not been able to swear in the new Democratic member, a woman called Adelita Grivalda, and once she comes on board, she will be the 218th signature that is needed on a discharge petition. In other words, it is a procedural tool that would then force a vote on the House floor to release that full tranche of Epstein records. So as we speak, the government in the US is starting, we understand, to sort of get through the deadlock. Once she is sworn in, that will trigger, essentially, her signature will trigger what happens next to the Epstein Files. So we could wake up tomorrow and find, you know, the inbox pretty full of more stuff that we are going to get through.
And presumably Trump, when he's not coming after the BBC, will be keeping a close eye on this to try and stop her from doing that.
Well, it's not just her, it's the whole Oversight Committee. I mean, basically, what is interesting about this story, it's one of the very few political stories in the US that has bipartisan support. You know, there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, fiercely MAGA.
Your busy mate.
My best mate. She loves me. But she on this, she's been a key voice. She's been saying, release the Epstein Files. Tell us what's going on. And you've had, you know, voices like Amy Wallace, the co-author of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, saying, release the Epstein Files.
Why is it my job? It's someone else's job.
Exactly. And you've had Democrats as well, very senior Democrats, even Chuck Schumer, saying, we want to see what's in the files. So there is this sort of concerted effort amongst many lawmakers in the US to say, we just want to know. And the one person who doesn't want those files released is Trump.
And we may be getting more insight into why today. Is it assumed that in these Epstein files there is video and audio as well as emails and stuff?
Oh, I just don't know that.
We don't know.
I mean, what we do know, just to go back, is a lot of women came forward between the years 2006, 2007, to the police in Florida, to the police, to the FBI, and gave names of what had happened to them. And there was meant to be a trial of Epstein that ended up in a plea bargain. In other words, all that stuff just went away. Right. Now, there is testimony, there are names, there are witness statements from many of these young women. They were girls at the time. So will there be testimony in that? Probably. Will there be names? Probably. Will there be... I mean, the videos that he kept in his house
wonder what happened to them.
Right? So, I mean, it's odd, this phrase, isn't it? Release the Epstein Files. I don't know about you, but I have this idea of the ring binders. You know, you sort of imagine somebody sitting there sort of flipping from one place to another. Yeah. But this is 2025, and this has happened over 30 years. Yeah. So there will presumably be, you know, Post-it notes and video and intercepted telephone calls and testimony. I don't know how big this is going to be. I mean, all I do is I keep calling it the iceberg.
But this, I mean, for Donald Trump, given that he has said repeatedly, hasn't he, that, we weren't even that close, this isn't Epstein just chatting to anybody. This is Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell saying Trump spent hours with one of these girls.
Trump spent hours. Yeah. I mean, he spent hours at his house. I think that his means Epstein's house with one of Epstein's victims. Now, I mean, I don't think Epstein would call, you know, a woman in his house his victim.
No.
Right, so you have to sort of...
he's alluding to.
Well, you know, we know that Trump spent time, from this email, we understand that Trump spent time at Jeffrey Epstein's house with, you know, the allegations are with girls.
And the recent book, Amy Wallace, Virginia Giuffre, it painted the picture of what that meant for those girls, didn't it, very clearly?
Yeah, I mean, she's very careful not to mention Donald Trump's involvement there. Yeah. She actually says that Trump was one of the few who had helped Virginia Giuffre, gave her babysitting jobs actually when she was working at Mar-a-Lago as sort of assistant in the spa. But we do know in detail what those young women, what those girls went through, and how little they were believed when they tried to tell their stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. This will concentrate his mind, won't he, as he comes for the Beeb?
Well, it really should concentrate his mind to a staggering degree. I mean, I think it is very important to underscore that this Epstein story is not going away. It is the slow burn depth charge beneath his presidency and beneath his White House. And the fact that these revelations underscore questions that members of Donald Trump's Make America Great Again grassroots movement have over the president's veracity relating to his friendship with the deceased and disgraced sex trafficking financier, and also raise questions about even his claims that he threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. Epstein, in one of these emails, is telling Michael Wolff, the author, that he was never a member of Mar-a-Lago and is pushing back even at the notion that he was thrown out. I do think it is very important to underscore we are not seeing the full context of these emails. We're only seeing small snippets of what we understand is a trove of fresh documentation that the House Oversight Committee up on Capitol Hill now has its hands on. That, by the way, should almost certainly be quite worrying to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and to members of the royal family, because it's perfectly possible that there is more information contained in those documents that we haven't yet seen about the nature of Andrew Windsor's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, this comes at an extraordinarily difficult moment politically, because it is already apparent that Marjorie Taylor Greene, the conspiracy theory believing congresswoman from Georgia, I mean, this is a woman who has previously articulated the view that Jewish-controlled space lasers are responsible for forest fires in California. She is making it apparent to people that she wants to run for the Republican Party's presidential nomination in 2028. And what she's doing is presenting herself as legitimate, pure 100% MAGA. And in order to be legitimate, pure 100% MAGA, never mind the conspiracy theories, she wants total transparency over everything pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein, whatever the circumstances, whatever the consequences of that for Donald Trump.
Well, presumably because in order to be that MAGA, sort of queen of MAGA almost, she has to bring him down a notch or two.
Well, I think what she understands viscerally, because she is of that community, is that MAGA wants to know everything there is to know about Jeffrey Epstein. And so as soon as the government shutdown is over, the House Oversight Committee and Democrats in the House of Representatives will have enough votes, because there's been this bizarre standoff over one congresswoman who has been waiting weeks to be sworn in, a Democrat, by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson. She's going to be sworn in, has to happen later this week. At that point, Democrats will have the vote formally to call on the White House to release every single document they've got in the Department of Justice possession about Epstein. And remember that in February, the Attorney General Pam Bondi told the American public and Donald Trump's MAGA supporters that she had Jeffrey Epstein's contact book on her desk. She was reviewing all of these documents ahead of their public release. And then fast forward to July, nothing had happened. And suddenly the Department of Justice said, well, there were no documents to release. In fact, there was no contacts book and there were no documents under review that could possibly be released. Now, you don't have to be the most dyed-in-the-wool conspiracy theorist to conclude that there's a cover-up underway at the White House over the nature of Donald Trump's friendship and involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. And certainly these emails fuel the suggestion that Donald Trump at least one point spent hours in the company of one alleged victim of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's trafficking operation. There's going to be huge questions for President Trump about that. And I'm not sure that if he defaults to his position up until now, which is that anything compromising relating to his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein is fake news. It's news that has been created by the Democrats, documents, all a hoax. That's not going to wash with MAGA.
Also, what struck me reading it, and I may just be being a bit sort of pedantic about language, but saying you spent hours with one of the victims, you know, that's potentially incriminating enough. But then writing as well to Michael Wolff, of course he knew about the girls, which suggests a much deeper knowledge of because about the girls isn't just that girls were there. About the girls is what they were there for, isn't it?
Well, again, it depends on that larger context of what the conversation was that was taking place. I do think, by the way, there are huge questions today for Michael Wolff, because in one of those email exchanges, he appears to be offering Jeffrey Epstein advice on how Donald Trump might, during an interview, respond to questions about his friendship with Epstein, which would seem on the face of it to be going quite a long way away from the position of investigative journalist who was trying to get to the bottom of all of this. So I think there's questions for him in all of this. But yes, I mean, you know, this undercuts everything that Donald Trump has said in recent months about Epstein. But the main thing that he keeps saying is it's a dead issue. Well, he might want it to be a dead issue. Jeffrey Epstein is indeed dead, but the issue is absolutely alive and smouldering.
And can I zoom out a little and ask you, in a sense, the same question I'm asking callers at this hour, which is, if this gets hotter for Trump and more difficult for Trump, and it very easily could, and if there is, and again, it's an if there is a growing slew of evidence that he was party to abuse of girls at those locations, can he survive that the way he glibly said he could survive shooting someone on Fifth Avenue?
I mean, Sheila, you and I both have now been covering this man for long enough that I think he can survive pretty much anything. I mean, he's just survived tearing down the East Wing of the White House. He has survived all sorts of things that previous presidents wouldn't have survived 2 minutes after they'd occurred. I think it's going to be very complicated. He will undoubtedly tough it out and say that it's all a hoax. He'll tell Pam Bondi to go and start investigating even more Democrats that he will claim have been involved in concocting all of this alleged evidence against him. But his big problem is going to be within the MAGA movement. It's among his grassroots supporters. It doesn't really matter what Democrats and their supporters think about all of this. They weren't ever going to back him or vote for him anyway. It fuels the Democrats with a fresh reason to go after him and to think that they can make hay over this, and to do so specifically because, Make America Great Again supporters, the Venn diagram between them and people that really want to get to the bottom of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes absolutely neatly intersects. The other thing that, of course, is on his radar screen right now is the commutation request from Ghislaine Maxwell, and that came in only last week, as she now resides in a much more relaxed, lower security prison in Texas, following her transfer there from a much tougher regime in Tallahassee after her 2 days of interviews that she gave to the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who, not coincidentally, is Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell clearly thinks that she's got a deal with the Justice Department and that she can now expect commutation of her sentence by President Trump because in those 2 days of interviews with Todd Blanche, she absolutely didn't dob him in. Well, there are all sorts of suggestions in these emails that will raise fresh questions about the veracity of what she told Todd Blanche over those 2 days in Tallahassee.
It's important to say some of these emails were sent to her, not just to Michael Wolff. There were, So she was.
Correct.
So she was.
Yes, exactly.
So she knew. She knew. Yeah.
Well, at one point she says in an email back to Jeffrey Epstein that I've been thinking about the fact that Donald Trump, as Epstein puts it, and his relationship with Epstein is the dog that hasn't barked. So, I mean, you'd think that if you were the Deputy Attorney General and if those issues were not covered in 2 days of interviews before you decided to send her to a lower security prison and she then applied for a commutation of sentence, you'd think you might have some fresh questions for her. But Donald Trump's got a huge question now. Does he go ahead and commute her sentence? Because any kind of leniency towards her is also going to play very badly with those MAGA supporters that already smell a rat in all of this.
And can I ask you about the MAGA world here? Do they mind so much because a large number of them are from a kind of Christian base? Or is it because they want the MAGA movement to be politically clean for the next time around?
I think the answer to that is yes, in both cases. And I think it's important to put it into a broader context. Remember a few years ago when there was a conspiracy theory, totally unfounded, completely false, that claimed that Hillary Clinton had been abusing children in the basement of a Washington pizzeria, Pizzagate.
Yeah.
You and I talked about it at the time. It was in fact
put me right
it was
off
in fact
pizza,
the pizza restaurant. It was the restaurant where my children learned to enjoy pizza. It doesn't have a basement, right? So but that fueled the MAGA movement into the nascent MAGA movement as it was at the time back in 2014, 2015.
We've got to rid our politics of these people,
Yeah, completely. I mean, we had at one point a bloke with a shotgun, and it's just down the road from my house. We had a bloke with a shotgun turning up at the pizzeria. So this issue of child sexual abuse is so galvanizing, partly because many of those supporters come from an evangelical Christian background, but also partly because it's criminal activity. And if you're going to pledge to wipe out criminal activity in the United States, and there is a suggestion of unexplained events that involved even the president that you have followed sort of cult-like now through 3 separate elections, that's just a massive problem for him.